Yeah, new guys coming to you live. You could bet this like Jerome. New guys are men of steel. Best coverage in the league. Prime Reavers on the field. Don't know better ask. Nick, the hype is real. Gurus with the knowledge, you can check the mass appeal. They gon' turn your fantasies into dollar bills, making dynasties from drafts like the Spurs when they build. Want the bragging rights and titles at your work. Let the new guys serve the wisdom to you first. I ain't advertising, just kicking facts. They turn average Joes to Drakes, cause they winning back to backs. So sit back, relax, all ears when they speak, and rain on competition with anything they leak. Make leagues joy gray like Ramsey did Reek. Passing off the mic, I'm out here, peace.
Hello everyone, welcome to week 10. We've reached double digits of the NFL season. How's it going, Nick?
Going pretty good. I thought when you said double digits, I thought you meant followers who were actually listening. I got
yeah,
for a second.
One can only hope we'll get there.
Yeah, maybe in a couple of years.
That's our long-term goal.
Yeah.
So week 10 is pretty interesting. This is when some leagues have their trade deadlines approaching. It's towards the end of buys, but 4 teams do still have their buys this week: Denver, Minnesota, Houston, and Baltimore. And this tends to be when teams on the cusp of their playoff hunts tend to make their playoff pushes. So this is really where you separate the boys from the men, the strong from the weak. And we're here to help you out with that. Real quickly, Nick actually closed the gap on our Pick'em challenge. Nick won 2 of the 3 last week. I got Miami right. He got Pittsburgh and New England right. So I'm up 8-6 right now. Nick, we haven't really discussed this, so let me get your opinion. What happens if we tie?
What happens if we tie? That's a good question. I think we might both have to buy a jersey and rock them for next season. That might be the move.
Fair enough. Fair enough. You'll pick mine, I'll pick yours.
Yeah, that's the deal.
Okay, yeah, I'm in agreement there. That sounds good to me. All right, so we are going to preview this week's NFL schedule. So with that being the plan, I'm going to try and get this video out to you before kickoff tomorrow. And as such, that's where we'll begin. Carolina at Pittsburgh. So since we're talking about these 2 teams, I feel like we should briefly discuss Le'Veon Bell, because that's the topic on everyone's mind right now. Is he returning? Is he not? I'm kind of over this conversation. Well, let's just let the man do what he wants.
Yeah.
But has anything changed for you since last week?
No, I don't think so. It's become so dragged on at this point that everyone thinks they know what they're talking about.
And no one really does.
I mean, he does have to sign by next week to play this season. So if it's going to happen, it's going to happen the next week. So that at least that'll bring an end to the discussion finally. But, I mean, still, if you have James Conner, I think James Conner is an RB1 going forward with or without Le'Veon Bell.
Yes.
He's still going to be a part of the offense. He's been doing better than Le'Veon Bell. And that doesn't mean he's better than Le'Veon Bell, like, skill-wise, but he's definitely had better production so far.
I think he has 4 consecutive games with 100-plus yards.
And 50 receiving yards, too. So
they're using him as a every down back, a workhorse. And, yeah, hopefully you did not drop James Conner or trade him away in anticipation of Bell's return.
Mm-hmm.
So for this game, Carolina's really been rolling. Greg Olson's looking like the Greg Olson of old, where he's getting 6, 7, 8 targets a game and apparently making one-handed touchdown grabs.
Yeah, it was a nice catch.
It was very, very nice. And Juju sort of resurged. He had a good game last week. I think 78 yards. So let me get your opinion. Who's winning this, and what do you expect?
Well, I expect a good game. Both teams are pretty hot right now, coming off multiple wins. I'm going to go with the Steelers because it's in Pittsburgh. I just feel like that might be the deciding factor here. I'm expecting a big game from McCaffrey and Connor, which I'm excited about because I have both of them actually in our fantasy league, 8-1. But I'm expecting a good game. The last few Thursday night, Monday night games haven't really been too good. So I'm excited that there's a good matchup with a lot of fantasy players involved.
Yeah, this is one I'm going to be watching very closely just because it's two good teams, and I'm excited about it. But I don't have much stake in this game, a player here or there, but I'm just excited for the actual game itself.
Mm-hmm.
So I think James Conner's going to have a huge week as well because potentially Bell may return next week. Like you said, he sort of has to make that decision this week. So they really will want to showcase James Conner one last time. I mean, I know the trade deadline is passed, but really just to see what they have out of him. I do kind of, at least for me, I feel like the Pittsburgh tight end situation over the past few weeks, there's been some clarity about that. Because they have, Jesse James and Vance McDonald.
Yeah.
And it was sort of back and forth for a while. I think Vance McDonald is the one you want to own. He's actually looked pretty good, and I know James gets 3, 4, 5 targets a game. But I think the one they used him with the chains is Vance McDonald. And remember, he was injured at the beginning of the season, so I do think for the remainder of the season, he has more value than people seem to really expect. I've seen him out on a couple wires, and where I have tight end needs and bye weeks coming up, I went and scooped him up. So I think there's a bit more relevance there than people realize. And for Carolina, like you said, CMC, we mentioned Olsen. Other than them, Funches and Cam, I'm not really sold on anyone having steady value. Although their rookie has looked good. So for dynasty and keeper leagues and, bye week fill-ins, it's a decent option. I guess we'll move on because I agree with you. Pittsburgh's going to win that game. Detroit at Chicago. I have Chicago. Their defense steamrolled the Bills last week, and Detroit's O-line let Stafford get sacked 10 times by the Vikings.
Mm-hmm.
So I expect much of the same in this game. I don't think Trubisky and the Chicago offense will really need to do too much to win this game, especially if Khalil Mack returns on defense. I think this is just going to be a pretty one-sided game, and Detroit's going to be in catch-up mode.
Yeah, I agree. I think it'll be pretty clear-cut. Just Detroit had a really bad game last week against a good defense, but they're going against a great defense in this game. So I only really anticipate the same. Allen Robinson's supposed to be back this week too, so that's a added boost for that Chicago offense. Try to get him involved. So yeah, I'm expecting a good game from Chicago. I have some concern about Kerryon Johnson this game. I don't know how he's going to fare against that defense. They'll probably, as you said, be in catch-up mode, just throwing deep. So maybe guys like Kenny Galladay will get a chance to push up their numbers though.
Statistically, the Bears have the top-ranked run defense, and they've been without Khalil Mack for a long time. So I agree. I'm nervous about Kerryon Johnson.
Yeah.
Actually, in our family league, I currently have him on the bench. I've been known to tinker. That might change. But if you have better options, I'd try to look elsewhere just because I'm nervous about that as well. Let me ask you, because I know at the beginning of the season you were a little skeptical, but now here we are entering week 10. Are the Bears for real?
I don't think their offense is there yet. Their defense is for real, definitely. Yeah, after a few weeks, I wasn't so sure. I didn't know if it was just a phase or whatever. But yeah, no, I recognize them as a top 3 to 5 defense right now. Maybe even better than that. Because, I don't know, they've really proved a lot without their best player, one of the best guys in the league too, and it's only going to get better when he's consistently playing healthy. He hasn't really been healthy this whole year, and look what he's done.
True, and worth mentioning because this matchup, I think we're in agreement the Bears will win. 2 of their next 3 games are against Detroit.
Okay.
So even if you don't view them as Super Bowl contenders, I definitely think they have a shot to be a legitimate playoff team and escape the first round, in my opinion. I don't see them going much further than that, but a pretty soft schedule the next handful of weeks. And like you said, the defense is absolutely legit, and the offense looks like they're on the rise. So we'll see. Next on the docket is the Saints at Cincinnati, and I'll let you tee this one off.
I'm going with the Saints. I think Cincinnati's a good team. They're 5-3 right now. But I don't know. Everyone was watching the same thing I watched last week. Saints beating the undefeated Rams by 10 points. That offense, honestly, looks like one of the best of all time. You got a Hall of Fame quarterback. You got two guys who could be all-pro running backs, and you got an all-pro receiver in Michael Thomas. And now you just added Des Bryant to the mix, too. I don't know how much he's going to actually play this weekend. Probably not much, maybe just a couple of red zone looks. But still, I don't think it's going to be close. I think it's going to be similar to when the Bengals played the Chiefs on that Sunday night game. The Bengals just get overpowered by that offense beginning, and then they're just in catch-up mode the whole time, and just they're out of it.
I think it'll be a little closer than people expect, because the Bengals, I think, are a little better than people realize. And they're at home. I agree the Saints win this game. I'd say more than 4 points, but less than a touchdown. I think this one's going to be surprisingly close. And I know the Bengals are without A.J. Green, but John Ross is healthy finally, and Tyler Boyd looks like a legitimate receiver in the league. Joe Mixon's healthy. I just, their O-line's definitely improved from last year. So I think it's a little bit closer. I'm not going to say a shootout, but a high-scoring game that the Saints win. Just not with as much ease as people might expect after last week. And I agree with you. I don't see Dez being on the field that much this week, just because it's a 1 o'clock game and he signed today on Wednesday. So he's really not going to have much time to develop any sort of chemistry with Breeze, learn the playbook. He hasn't played a snap of football all year. So I think he'll be more incorporated next week. But, something to monitor and someone to stash if he's available in your league. Atlanta at Cleveland. I'm going to go with the Falcons here because they just look like they're playing the best football of the season at this point in the season. I know their defense has been banged up, but Tevin Coleman and Ito Smith just ran all over Washington, which up until this week was a pretty good defense in regards to stopping the run. Matt Ryan's playing about as well, if not better, than he did 2 years ago in his MVP year. Julio Jones finally scored a touchdown.
Yeah, finally.
So I just think Atlanta's really rolling right now, and Cleveland's offense looked a lot better with their new coaching staff in play and utilizing Duke Johnson, but I don't think it's enough to beat the Falcons this week.
Yeah, I'm going with the Falcons too. They're coming off 2 or 3 straight wins. I don't know, a few. They beat a pretty good team last week in the Redskins. I mean, even though even though their record indicates they're a lot better than they actually are, they're still a good team. And Cleveland just fired their entire coaching staff in the last week. I don't know if is their first or second game with the new staff. I think second.
Second. This will be their second.
So still, I don't know. I just don't love it for them. I'm going with the Falcons too. And I don't think it'll be too close. Maybe Falcons win by a touchdown to 10, somewhere around there.
Yeah, I agree with that. People seem to forget Baker Mayfield's still a rookie. So, it's not going to be easy sledding every single week. And Atlanta's defense is banged up. They're home. They've played better at home. But Atlanta's a team that, had their defense not gotten crippled, they had Super Bowl aspirations. And Cleveland's just not there yet. So, Next we have the Patriots at Tennessee. So, Nissan Stadium. Tennessee's offense looked a lot better this past week on Monday night. Coming out of their bye, Mariota looked healthy. Their O-line's at full strength again. They seem to have gone from a two-headed attack to utilizing Deion Lewis as almost an every down back. And they just looked a lot better on offense other than their first couple possessions where they fumbled the ball 3 straight times, one of which got reversed, but they put the ball on the ground 3 times. After that, they looked pretty good, though. I don't think it's enough to beat the Patriots. It's Tom Brady. Sony Michel's expected to return. We'll see what happens with Gronk. But there are some positive signs coming out of Tennessee. And if Mariota's playing healthy and running and Deion Lewis looks as good as he has their last 2 games, I think that just opens things up for Corey Davis as well. Again, not enough to beat the Patriots. And Josh Gordon looked great last week. That's the Josh Gordon people expected when they drafted him when he was in Cleveland. So I feel like he's someone you can fire up almost every week with confidence now that he's on the field for, 90+% of the snaps?
Yeah, something like that.
Let me get your opinion of something and also who you think will win this game. Even with Sony Michel returning and possibly Gronk, Cordero Patterson looked good running the ball the last 2 weeks. He's gotten 10 or more carries per game. And at least for fantasy purposes, he's been designated as both a receiver and a running back now. It's sort of like what happened with Ty Montgomery a few years ago in Green Bay. Even with all these skill position players returning, do you think he has relevance or no going forward?
Not really. He has been running it good, but just Sony Michel coming back this week, I kind of think takes away from that. If he was out another week, then maybe he's worth a start in the flex, but I just can't see the third best running back you feel confident starting him. So while I do think he adds value to the Patriots team, I just don't know how much his fantasy value is.
True, and I tend to agree. I think he'll have probably 2 big weeks the rest of the way just because Belichick likes to throw curveballs. But you're going to have no idea when those weeks are. And other than that, like you said, he'll touch the ball, just not enough to be really relevant. I agree with that. Who do you have winning this game?
I got the Patriots. I don't even think it'll be that good of a game.
Okay.
Yeah. Titans looked good, but it's just the Patriots. It's different than the Cowboys.
Yeah, I agree. And we'll get into the Cowboys in a little bit. But yeah, the Patriots. So far we have a clean sweep. We're in agreement. So let me see. This might be where we start to deviate because we're getting into your Colts here. The Jaguars are coming to town.
Yeah.
And they're coming to town without AJ Boye.
That's huge for Andrew Luck and the boys.
Yep.
Yeah, so this is a big game. We're 2.5 games back in the division. Houston's on their bye this week, so we definitely need to win this week because they won on that missed field goal by Brandon McManus. I still don't know how he missed it, but nonetheless, AJ Boye is out, which is huge. That's definitely a big hit to their secondary that hasn't looked that great lately without him. So while I do expect T.Y. to get shadowed most of the day by Jalen Ramsey, I expect a lot of guys to get open. I expect us to put a decent amount of points. I mean, this offense has been putting up 35 points the last 4 games for the Colts. So while this is a better defense, it still doesn't look like the team it was last year. So I think the Colts will win. I think it'll be a close game though. Maybe by a field goal or something we'll win.
Okay. Fair enough. And I agree. T.Y. will probably get shadowed. You're still playing T.Y. if you have him. But temper expectations. Jack Doyle will probably have a big game here just because Andrew Luck likes to look his way. He's healthy. Ebron really wasn't on the field that much last week. I think he scored, or 2 weeks ago because they had their bye.
Yeah, he scored though.
I think he scored in that game, but you don't feel great about his snap count. I will disagree with you on this one.
All right. If you want to be wrong, that's okay.
This could be just because I lived in Duval last year, so I might be a bit of a homer with this. Without AJ Boye, I agree it's a big hit to their secondary, but finally, the return of Leonard Fournette.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
It revitalizes this offense. It gives them the spark they need. I think it opens things up for everyone else because they're going to get back to pounding the rock.
That line's a mess, though, this year. That line is so bad for the Jags. I just don't know.
I'm expecting big things from the offense this week. Everybody's sleeping on them, and I'm actually, and we'll see if it works out. I'm using D.D. Westbrook as a flyer in a few leagues where I have some bye week issues.
I wouldn't call it a flyer. He's probably gonna have 25 points, dude. Every okay receiver who goes against the Colts looks like a perennial All-Pro, dude. But that's why I think it'll be a high-scoring game. But I just think our offense outmatches theirs.
But a lot of people think Keelan Cole's their best receiver on the Jaguars. Some people believe in revenge games. So Dante Moncrief against his old team.
He sucks.
There's if you ask 3 different people, you'll get 3 different perspectives. I think it's going to be Dede this week just because I think he's the best receiver on that team. Their most dynamic receiver. Sometimes he does punt returns. So if it counts in the league you're in, that's something to consider. Just some extra touches. But yeah, this is our first difference. I think Jacksonville's offense finally gets on the right track. And while the Colts defense has looked better, Darius Leonard, potential defensive rookie of the year. I don't think it's enough. I think Jaguars win this game. So
All right.
let me mark this down, and I'll have you dive into the next one. Arizona at Arrowhead, Kansas City.
We don't even have to cover this game. The Chiefs are going to win this game by 15. They opened in Vegas as minus 17, the spread. I've never seen a spread that big ever in the history of betting. They're literally saying, here's the Cardinals, we'll spot you a 17-0 lead, and we're still going to destroy you by a decent amount. So, this game's going to be boring. This is going to be a highlight reel for Patrick Mahomes and company. I mean, maybe just because they're going to be down by 50-0, David Johnson will manage to get a couple of scores in because it's not a great defense. So I'm actually expecting like a pretty good game out of him just because what else are they going to do? He's the only way they're going to get a yard of offense. And the Chiefs are going to be playing a zone most of the game. They're going to be backed up, just trying to prevent the big play. So I think that's a lot of underneath stuff for David Johnson.
Fair enough. I think Kansas City steamrolls Arizona. You're starting everybody. Monitor Sammy Watkins' health. I don't know if he's going to play, but other than that, fire up all of them. Christian Kirk's played a little better the last couple weeks, pretty much since Arizona's gone through their coaching change. But a rookie on the road in a loud stadium like that at Arrowhead, I wouldn't feel great about that. But he could have some streaming appeal going forward. He was someone I considered in our league, actually, our family league for this week. Ultimately decided on Dede, but just, someone to keep an eye on. I don't think he has a big game this week, though. And I agree with you, a lot of short stuff to DJ, but Kansas City wins handily. So next we have the division game, Buffalo against a Sam Darnold-less Jets team. The Jets have already ruled him out, and will be starting Josh McCown. Terrell Pryor, revenge narrative. Now in Buffalo, he was already on the field for the majority of snaps last week. And, you can make the case that he's a better receiver than Kelvin Benjamin. Carolina got better after Benjamin left, so he might have a pretty big game, but I just don't like anything about the Bills' offense.
Yeah. This is going to be a boring game.
Yeah.
It'll be similar to, I think, the Jets game last week against Brock Osweiler at 13-6 or something like that. Maybe a little more high scoring just because I feel like you have to be. Then 13-6, that's kind of hard to happen again.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe a 20-13 game or something. I think I'm going to go with the Jets. They kind of tend to have this thing where they win, then they lose, and they win, then they lose. Always at mediocrity, never tanking. So I just feel like they're going to be able to outscore Buffalo, even with Josh McCown at quarterback. He's better than whoever they have. Who are they starting? Peterman again?
I think Anderson this week.
Okay.
But, either way, it's not great.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the Jets had Robbie Anderson and Quincy Enunwa return last week. They also had Eli McGuire return last week, and he looked pretty good. He had, I believe, 3 catches and really sort of stepped into the below pal role there. At home, but I do think Buffalo has a pretty legitimate defense. I think it's going to be close. I agree it's going to be a terrible game.
Yeah, and you're definitely not watching this game. We're not seeing on Red Zone much.
I'm in New York, and I'm going to find a way to not watch this game. You know what? Just to be different, I'm rolling with Buffalo.
All right, they circle the wagons.
Yeah, just to be different. This division, other than the Patriots, they've always sort of, gutted each other. And I'm going to go with the Bills. Todd Bowles is on the hot seat. Buffalo's got the better defense. Anderson's a step above Peterman, which isn't saying much, but, I think Pryor wants to get back at the Jets. Going with Buffalo.
All right.
Feel great about it, but why not? Try and cause some separation between us.
Yeah.
8-6 is close to comfort. So next we have Washington against Fitzmagic and the Buccaneers. And I'll let you get started here.
Yeah, this is going to be a pretty interesting game. I'm not really too confident on a pick, honestly, for this one. Because the Buccaneers just have this way where some weeks they look awesome, some weeks they don't. It's really just the big play. Every game they go into with Fitzpatrick, they kind of just chuck it as far as they can and hope they catch it. And the games they end up catching it, the games they end up winning. So I don't think Washington's secondary is great. I think they have a good run defense, and that's not the Buccaneers' strength. They're really like to attack these pass defenses. And while they have Josh Norman, they don't have much outside of him. So I'm going to go with Fitzpatrick, actually. They haven't won in a couple weeks. I think they're due for one. I think the Redskins are showing who they are. So yeah, I'll ride with Fitzpatrick, my Tampa boy.
So I am also going to roll with Tampa and Fitzpatrick. Because like you said, they sort of do all their damage through the air, which Washington hasn't been great at stopping. The way Washington's really played is they like to just run the ball with Peterson. Run. Time possession and rely on their defense. And like you said, their defense is kind of exposed to what Tampa's good at. I also don't think Washington's really going to be able to just sit there and run the ball 20-plus times, or at least not effectively. I mean, Tampa's D doesn't scare you, but Washington just lost their 2 starting guards last week for the season. Sean Laveu, I don't know if I said that, Laveu, was their starting left guard, and Brandon Shepherd was their starting right guard. Both done for the year.
Yeah.
So I just don't know if Washington's going to be able to do what they've tried to do at offense for the first 9 weeks of the season. So I agree with you on Tampa winning this game because I think Washington, for fantasy purposes, I think they're going to have to get rid of the ball quicker and throw more, so you might start to see Dotson and Reed become more relevant. And then when Crowder returns, if Jamison Crowder returns this week, maybe him as well. Because Paul Richardson's also out for the year with a shoulder injury. But for this week specifically, I think it's Tampa, and I'm not too nervous about it. I do just want to mention, for any Mike Evans owners, he had a down week last week, but he did see 9 targets. He only caught 1 of them. But I wouldn't be concerned going forward. And Adam Humphries actually had 2 touchdowns and looked really good this past week. So, I know earlier in the season, Deshaun Jackson was playing great with Fitzpatrick, but just something to monitor. Tampa's got a lot of weapons there. And, this past week it was a big O.J. Howard and Adam Humphries game. So other than Mike Evans and O.J. Howard, I think everyone else will sort of be up and down.
Yep.
So next, we have my brother's Chargers against John Gruden's Raiders. Pretty one-sided.
Yeah, this is... I mean, if Nick Mullins can beat that team by 40, just wait till Phillip Rivers and Melvin Gordon get a hold of him.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything on either team you really want to touch on?
Start everyone on the Chargers offense. Maybe if you want to take a flyer, Mike Williams had a pretty big touchdown last week. I'm expecting everyone to get looks in that game. A lot of time of possession for the Chargers.
I agree. All Chargers fired him up. And I'm going to say Tyrell Williams, actually. He scored, 4 weeks in a row?
Yeah, something like that.
And Oakland does not scare you at all. Also, I think 4 targets is enough for him to find a way to hit at least one big play against Oakland.
Yeah.
Oakland's a mess. They really are a mess this year.
They're just openly tanking. They know it. Everyone knows it.
Yep. So, we both say the Chargers and play them all. So, let me get into another game that I don't expect to be very competitive. Miami will be playing at Lambeau against a Packers team that desperately needs a win.
Yeah, they've looked bad recently, the Packers, but when you look at the grand scheme of things, it's going to be Brock Osweiler versus Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah,
that's all you need to know for the matchup preview. I expect the Packers to be mad, just knowing that they have to win, and not just win convincingly to kind of save any hope for the season to go anywhere. So I'm just expect them to come out guns blazing. Defense plays well, offense plays well, and just a boring game, honestly. Big game from Adams and that other receiver. I forget his name. The one with the long last name.
Marquez Valdez-Scantling.
Yeah, that dude.
Well, he will be starting because Geronimo Allison was placed on IR. So let me ask you this while we're on Green Bay. Outside of Devontae Adams, at receiver at least, who do you prefer? Valdez-Scantling or Randall Cobb going forward?
I like the Valdez-Scantling guy. He's put up double-digit numbers the last 4 weeks. He's reliable. They go to him a lot of third downs. And I just feel like Randall Cobb's been fluky this year outside of that 80-yard touchdown he had or whatever.
Yeah, he's been a little banged up too, but that's been the story of Randall Cobb for the last handful of seasons. And Valdez-Scantling is, outside of just getting it done, he's looked impressive on a handful of his grabs.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, we're in agreement. Green Bay gets back on track. For Miami, it's going to be a big Kenyon Drake game because, like you said, Green Bay is going to come out firing. Miami's going to get down, and I expect them to do what Washington did last week, abandon the run, which means Frank Gore will probably only see about 7 or 8 touches, and they'll really try to move the chains through Kenyon Drake. Could be wrong. We've seen some crazy games this season thus far, but that's realistically what I expect to happen. Danny Amendola has been getting 5 or 6 catches a game, at least in PPR formats. He's had decent relevance. And Devontae Parker had a huge game last week. Do you think any pass catchers in Miami stand out this week, separate themselves from the pack?
I don't. Green Bay's got a pretty solid number 1 corner in Jari Alexander. I think that's his name. He's a rookie or second-year player. I don't know. He's young. But he's been playing pretty well recently. So maybe if he shadows the one guy, it gives looks to the second guy. But it's just hard when you have such a bad quarterback situation counting on any of these guys. So I definitely would not play any of them.
All right, fair enough. Next, we have Russell Wilson and the Seahawks on the road against the 8-1 LA Rams.
Yeah.
There are no undefeated teams in the league anymore after their loss to the Saints last week.
Yeah.
So I guess I'll let you get started here.
Yeah, I think the Seahawks have actually played well this year. If the Rams were undefeated, I I'd still like the Rams to win, but I think it would be a close game. But just coming off a loss, I think they're going to be pissed. I think they're going to come out firing. I think that whole offense, Sean McVay, they're going to be cooking up every play they got. And I think they're going to want to really put the hammer in on a division opponent. So I think everyone on the Rams goes off. I think they win by 2 touchdowns, maybe even a little more. I don't know. I just see them getting pissed at that loss to the Saints last week. They still want the 1 seed. Right now they're tied with the Saints. Or actually, the Saints might have the 1. I'm not sure how the tiebreaker goes, if it goes to head-to-head or.
I believe the Saints have the tiebreaker after last week.
Okay, yeah. So I think the Rams are definitely just going to want to put the nail in the coffin this week.
Okay. I agree. Seattle sort of overachieved this season in regards to what everyone expected from them. Their defense has been okay, actually.
It's top 5 in most things, honestly. I don't know how, though. I can't really name too many players besides Bobby Wagner, honestly.
Me either. I don't think they'll be top 5 this week against the Rams either.
Yeah.
But, yeah, they've impressed. Mike Davis has run the ball well. I believe Chris Carson's day-to-day. So that's a backfield to monitor for this game. Because you can sort of run the ball on the Rams until you fall behind 3 scorers and have to abandon the run. But, yeah, I think the Rams use this as a statement game and really just blow the roof off. Russell Wilson's looked pretty good. I mean, Seattle's really utilized the run this season and hasn't thrown much. They threw a little more last week, and I think in this game they have to. So I do think Wilson has a decent game. You know, Baldwin's healthy, Lockett's legit, but not enough to keep pace with the Rams.
Yeah.
The Sunday night game is an NFC showdown in Dallas against the Super Bowl Philadelphia Eagles. And I just want to start out on the Dallas side here because Amari Cooper made his debut last week, and they really made it a point of emphasis to try and get him the ball. He had a touchdown in the first quarter. Dak looked his way when he was double covered in the end zone another time. He didn't wow you, per se, but he kept getting separation. He kept getting looks. It's an encouraging sign compared to where he was in Oakland. And I know they sort of stalled out, but it opened things up a little for Zeke earlier in the game, at least in the first half. And also for Michael Gallup, who I thought looked pretty okay Monday night. You know, he's not going to draw top coverage. And I think, I know they lost last week, but I think it sort of opens things up for that offense. That being said, Philly's going to win this game. They're just a better offense. I believe they're coming off a bye. I guess we'll be seeing the Philly debut of Golden Tate this week for Philly. And I just think, also the return of Darren Sproles, potentially. So nearing full strength, I think Philly's just going to overmatch Dallas.
Yeah, they're just a better team, Philly. Dallas, yeah, looked good early a couple nights ago. But I don't know, they couldn't stay in it. That offense is boring. That line is not what it used to be 2 years ago. It is not a good line really at all, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
They're really missing their center, Travis Frederick, who's still out this year. He has some illness. I'm not sure what it technically is, but I know he hasn't played the whole year, and he's kind of the link to that offensive line. And I just think Philly just wants to win that division. They're a couple games behind the Redskins. And I think they just know that they have to start winning soon. And it started 2 weeks ago in Jacksonville. So now I just think they're just going to put the hammer in on the Cowboys. I don't think it'll be that lopsided of a game, but I just think Philly will win it convincingly.
Agreed. And if things go as we predict, with Washington losing at Tampa, it'll really be a big step in the right direction. You know, that divisional win and closing the gap on Washington. The last game
this week is Monday night, my G-Men against the 49ers on the road. And is Nick Mullins legit? Too early to tell?
Yeah, I think it's too early to tell. I think anyone could have went into Oakland and done that on that game. They were just out of it, openly saying giving up. I've never really seen a team just openly give up, just not look prepared at all. So I think it's too early. This week will really provide some clarification if he's actually a good QB or not, because you're seeing all sorts of speculation. How is Nick Mullins the real deal? Is Jimmy G going to go somewhere else? Are they going to trade him? I heard the Giants. I just heard a lot of crazy stuff over one game. So I'm actually, even though it's a not great game between two teams that have combined for 3 wins this year, still interesting game to watch. The Giants are always interesting. They got stars. And then to see what this guy's got, and if he could continue to build off what he did 2 weeks ago in another primetime matchup.
Who are you taking then?
I'll take the Giants. I think they're due for a win. I think that defense is much better than Oakland, so it'll be more of a challenge for Nick Mullins. And I don't know, that defense doesn't really scare you. They got a good D-line, but that secondary is exploitable. Richard Sherman isn't one he used to, so I think Eli will have a pretty good game. Odell will get some looks, so I'm going to go with the Giants in a close game.
Unfortunately, I agree with you. At this point, I've embraced the Giants tank, and I think a loss to another team at the bottom like San Fran is a big step in the wrong direction towards embracing the tank.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what the Giants tend to do in their down years. They beat up on 2 or 3 teams along the way so that we don't have the number 1 pick. You know, last year was just a terrible year, but I think, like you said, we have enough star power to not necessarily tear through San Fran's defense, but to put points on the board. And, you know, San Fran's on their 3rd quarterback. Nick Mullins, we really don't know what he is. And, you know, he had a good game, but he's a 3rd-string quarterback. You know, let's keep everything in perspective here. The Giants have a somewhat lockdown corner and are just a better team than Oakland. Oakland's fully embraced the tank. The Giants, I think, are starting to, but of all the teams at the bottom of the league, I think the Giants are the best of the worst. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I'd probably put him there.
So I agree the Giants win this one, and I hope we are wrong, because a loss to San Fran would be a huge step in solving our O-line and quarterback issues. But we'll see Monday night. Because we do have a little bit of extra time, I want to touch on a couple things. The 4 teams on buys this week are all pretty relevant fantasy teams, at least. So I want to just go through each of them and talk about a handful of things. I guess we'll start with Houston. Demaryius Thomas made his debut against his former team last week, and they made it a point of emphasis to target him early. But, you know, he was only with the team for a couple days, and after the first drive, really didn't do anything for Houston. So were you encouraged, discouraged, impressed? Anything?
He looked pretty good. I don't know if that was them just wanting to get him the ball in his first start just to show that he's a part of the offense or against his former team or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But he looked pretty good. He'll be a good number 2 option. I don't think he's as good as Will Fuller, but I definitely think he's startable if you need to plug him in somewhere.
I think for the rest of the season, he'll have an increase in value because of the better quarterback, because Houston does look like a playoff team. I think a few of their wins have been kind of fluky. Like you said, the missed kick last week. They could have lost to the Giants earlier in the season. A few of Houston's wins, you know, I put an asterisk next to.
Yeah.
but the better quarterback play, and they sort of went. Demaryius Thomas used to get the ball behind a lot of bubble screens, and Denver used to try and get him the ball in space, and Houston looked like they wanted to get back to that, to something that DT is comfortable with. So I think he might be used in a way that he's more familiar with than he was this past year in Denver. And if that is the case, I think it increases his value. Like you said, he's no Will Fuller, but if you have him, I'd be encouraged, especially now that he's been with the team for a week, has this bye, so he'll be with the team another week. By the time they play in Week 11, he should know the playbook and be pretty comfortable with Watson under center.
Mm-hmm.
The next team on the bye is Baltimore, and the receivers are sort of like a carousel here. This week, I believe their most targeted receiver was Willie Snead. So let me ask you, Snead, Crabtree, John Brown, do you think it's just game script dependent, or do you think there's a clear number one there? Because I was completely sold on it being John Brown, and he actually saw 6 targets last week. I believe 7th. I think one got called back due to penalty. But I'm a little nervous about that going forward, and it just sort of made their receiver situation more confusing for me last week. So what was your perspective there?
Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of weird. I think it's great game script at this point. Like you, I was pretty heavy on John Brown. I thought he was the best one. He's kind of the different one. He has the X factor with his speed. He's the deep threat.
Mm-hmm.
But this offense doesn't look like it did the first 4 weeks of the season. They're coming off a few losses in a row, and they just haven't looked good. They're not putting up the points they used to, and Flacco's missing some throws he wasn't missing early on.
Yeah.
So yeah, at this point, I think it's similar to like the Lions scenario that they had when they had Golden Tate, where 1 week Galladay would go off, another week Jones would go off, then be Tate. So if you're going to start one of them, you just got to hope that he's the one who gets the looks.
If we're being completely frank, their defense hasn't looked like they did at the beginning of the season either.
Yeah.
And this bye is really coming at the perfect time for them to hopefully get their struggles on both sides of the ball fixed. I still think John Brown is their best receiver. Like you said, he has that extra element with his speed, and hopefully they get back to that. And they have a relatively soft schedule going forward, but I feel less confident today than I did about that offense last week. So next we have Denver, and Cortland Sutton started alongside Emmanuel Sanders this past week against Houston. I was a little disappointed. I expected a lot more from Cortland Sutton this past week. What did you see?
Yeah, he didn't really look too good.
He was used about the same.
Yeah.
Which, to me, I believe their tight end had 10 targets last week.
Yeah, so I'm not really sure what they were trying to do there. Maybe it was just because it was his first game. I don't know. But I'm expecting him to still have a bigger role this season just because of the shoes that he's supposed to fill.
Mm-hmm.
But still, outside of Sanders and Lindsey, I don't think anybody you can feel confident in starting until Cortland Sutton proves to be that guy.
Yeah, agreed. 3 for 57 is just not very encouraging, and neither is having Case Keenum under center this year. So, yeah, they're on a bye, but I sort of take a wait-and-see approach. I think people that went out and used one of their top waiver claims on him expecting big things are pretty disappointed. And if someone panicked and dropped him, go grab him, because I think better things will come for Cortland Sutton going forward. But, yeah, it was
kind of a big disappointment.
Mm-hmm.
And last, we have the Minnesota Vikings on their bye. And one person who returned who really impressed last week was Dalvin Cook.
Yeah, he looked awesome. He had, I think, a 70-something yard run, one of his first runs, and that hamstring or whatever was holding him back looked like that injury was never there, because he looked like his old self, and that's a huge thing for people who have held on to him this whole season, expecting him to be the guy when he comes back, or people who traded him, like who traded for him, like you. So that's encouraging. It's really good that the bye came now too, so you don't have to worry about that setback happening, because he has another week to just chill and get ready. So I'm expecting big things with him. I think he's honestly going to be an RB10 going forward, definitely. Just top 10. That's a good offense going forward, and he's the guy. Latavius Murray's out now, so if you have him, start him.
I'm in agreement. I do think he's going to be great going forward, pending the health. Because they're on a bye, we're not getting many reports on Dalvin Cook or anyone in Minnesota. So, for all we know, maybe his hamstring flared up 2 days later. We just don't know. So I do want to see how he's practicing next week when they return from the bye. But, barring anything crazy like that, I think he does have top 10 upside the rest of the way. If he does return either 100% or close to it, because like you said, he did look great last week. I do just want to read this tweet. I'm not a big Twitter guy, but I came across this and I found this interesting. I believe I sent this to our group chat after the trade went through for me to get him. Dalvin Cook reached a top speed of 22.07 miles per hour on his 70-yard run in the second quarter against the Lions. This is now the fastest speed reached by a ball carrier this season.
Yeah, that's huge.
So that is huge for Minnesota and for Dalvin Cook owners. I do think, is Latavius Murray out?
Not out. I'm just saying going forward, I don't think he's going to have a role in the offense with Dalvin Cook.
I do think he'll still touch the ball a bit just because they don't want to, overdo anything at this point in the season with their franchise running back. I think Latavius Murray will be more of a drain on Dalvin Cook's value than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of like Cordell Patterson getting a couple touches, or what Frank Gore has been for Kenyon Drake. Murray's a great handcuff that'll see enough work to sort of cap Dalvin Cook's upside. He's not going to come back and be top 5 because I do think Latavius Murray stays somewhat involved, but I wouldn't play him unless Cook gets hurt again. So. Nick, let me ask you, is there anything else you wanted to touch on today?
Who do you want the Giants to draft?
Way too early.
Position group, though.
Oh, position group? All right, so last year I wanted us to trade down and get your Quentin Nelson and use the extra picks on the line and do all that. Obviously didn't happen. Everyone is now saying quarterback. I wouldn't mind going out and getting a bridge quarterback. Like Flacco, I believe, is a free agent this year. Maybe San Fran is willing to part with Garoppolo. I wouldn't mind getting a bridge gap for a year and completely focusing on that O-line. Plus, maybe Eli does have some relevance. This year has really convinced me otherwise, but you never know. So I would like to get a bridge quarterback and then go for Tua next year.
Yeah, I could see Flacco. I don't know about Garoppolo. That's not a bridge quarterback. That's a 10-year commitment right there, whatever his contract is, and the biggest contract of all time.
Yeah.
But maybe Flacco,
Is
someone like
that
him.
fair? If we go with Garoppolo and fix the O-line
He's
and it
solid.
worked
He's
out,
win.
then we don't need Tua. Because then we'll compete.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I would like to do because the O-line's the issue. And I do appreciate how the Giants went out and attempted to fix it this past year. It didn't work, obviously, but they at least tried when they overpaid for Nate and when they drafted Hernandez. They put in the effort. They cut Flowers. They tried. It didn't work, but I do like that they made the attempt, and I do think that's what the primary focus should be next year.
All right.
So let me ask you, are the Colts going to catch Houston?
I hope, man. I hope we can. We're 2 games behind. Well, 2.5. We have to win this week. Then we'll be 2. Then we play them December 9th, I think we play them. So it's going to come down to that game, honestly. I think if we beat them there, then we'll win. But if we don't, then our season's done. But going forward, dude, I think we're the best young team in that division, dude, by far. I don't think it's close. I think we got the best quarterback in Luck. We got really the Titans have a solid line, but we have a good young line right now. And they were 32nd in the league last year. We're the number 1 pass blocking line right now, and we're starting 2 rookies on it, bro. Our first and second round pick, both starting on that line and playing well, playing at an elite level. So I'm excited about that. We got the defensive rookie of the year in Darius Leonard, and really we haven't had a bust yet. Nyheim Hines, we just have these guys who are just contributing, all as rookies, just playing well. So I'm excited about the future, even though this year is not going to end in a Super Bowl or anything, but in the near future. Oh, and not to mention, we have the number 1 most cap room in the NFL by $30 million. So it's going to be spending all this offseason too. So I'm excited, man.
Yeah, so things are looking up for the Colts' future. It's definitely very bright. I don't know about catching Houston. I think
It'll be tough. They're a good team.
it'll depend on how their divisional game goes this week. You know, if they beat Jacksonville, maybe, because what was it, Tennessee was against the Patriots, they'll probably lose. Houston's on the bye, but it's not going to be easy.
Yeah. Do you think Marlon Mack, what do you think he does? He's coming off 2 30-point fantasy weeks. What do you think he does this week against a good D-line?
I think he was limited in practice today.
He's always limited. They always usually keep him out.
I think that's more so just because of all his previous health concerns. Just, obviously something to pay attention to, but I wouldn't be concerned about that. He really looks like the real deal. Against Jacksonville, I would probably temper expectations a little bit, but he's going to get the workload. He'll get 15 to 20 carries probably.
Yeah.
So, if you have better options playing, odds are he got dropped at some point. So if you have him, he wasn't one of your top backs entering the season, or you stashed him and he has panned out. But odds are you do have other options, and depending on what those options are, I might steer clear. But with 4 teams on a bye, maybe you're in a pinch and you have to play him. I don't think he's going to bust.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think he's going to get in the end zone. Last week he got in 2 times and over 100 yards. I don't think he does that.
Yeah, that's fair.
Maybe 70, 80 yards and a touchdown.
That's still a good week there.
It's still a good week, yeah. It's still a good week. But over the last 2 weeks, he's scored 4 times, and I just don't think that's going to happen against Jacksonville.
Yeah.
So scale it back, maybe a 12 to 15 point outing.
All right.
So, anyways, that about does it for us this week. Good luck with your lineups, and go San Francisco.
Peace.